This is the Mobile Tech Podcast, brought to you by worldpodcasts.com. Now here's your host, Tech Girl, Miriam Joie.
Brought to you by Audible. Stay tuned for a special offer at the end of the show. Hi, and welcome to the Mobile Tech Podcast. I'm your host, Miriam Joie, and today is Thursday, February 17th, 2022. And my guest is the awesome YouTube creator TechmeOut. Hi, how are you?
I am doing well. How about you?
I'm pretty great. So we've now spent about a week playing with the Galaxy phones, the new ones. And I kind of thought it'd be great to have you on because I had Enno Bong on last week and we talked about, all the new stuff and the tech and all the first impressions. Well, we just had the phones for like a few hours. But now you and I have spent like a week with them. So do you want to review them with me?
Yeah, let's talk. Let's talk about them because I'm in the midst of working on some content surrounding it, like my first impression. So this will definitely help get the thoughts going on different things that I've been enjoying and maybe not enjoying.
For sure. So I saw your unboxing video and I will put it in the show notes so people can watch it. And hopefully if you make another video before Saturday, I will put it in there as well so that people can see what your thoughts are. But maybe let's do top fives. What are the top 5 things that you really like about let's start with the Ultra because that's the big beast.
Yes, that's actually the one that I have the most experience with currently because that's the one I've been messing with the most out of the two. I have the S22 Ultra and the Galaxy S22. And 5 things that I like about it. One, I like the color. So I have the burgundy option. And I don't know, it just looks good. It's not a common color found on phones. It's different. So overall, I've been pleased with that. The other thing that I like is that the stylus is integrated into the phone. So I don't have to keep up with it externally. It simplifies, carrying it. The third thing, and let's keep in mind, these are in no particular order. The third thing here that I like about it is the display. That is something that I absolutely love with just like all Samsung phones. It's like, it's always a treat, when you open it up and power it on, especially when you get to that home screen, you're greeted with those vibrant colors and just that crisp, clear image. Very satisfying. So it's just like, ah. So I really like the display on it. The fourth thing, the cameras. I've really been enjoying the cameras. To me, it's like the perfect vlogging camera, especially in a phone format, more so because you have, your phone so you can communicate with others. You also still have the ability to consume media and things like that, kind of like a little mini computer, but also your mini DSLR, so to speak, because the cameras are so good and versatile as well. And I would say the last thing, we can't forget the battery. That battery will definitely get you through the entire day for sure. So no complaints there. I'm very pleased with that. So what about you? What are your top 5?
Oh man, I did a little top 5 video the other day on Instagram. My number 1 is probably the design. Like it feels like going home, this phone. Like it feels like you're picking up a Note 20 Ultra again, because it really is a Note. There's no other way to describe it. Like the design is exactly the same as the Note 20 Ultra was. And I just love that design. It just looks good and it feels good in hand. And yeah, it's big and massive and it's not for everyone.
Right.
But the integrated S Pen is just so nice. And I just like it. It just feels like very familiar. It's like putting on an old pair of sneakers, that I haven't worn in a while and they're just comfy. So that's number 1. Number 2, probably the cameras. They are incredible. Yeah. I mean, it's like on paper, they're almost the same as last year, but just some minor tweaks to the software and improvements to the user experience. And just overall, I just feel like Samsung's really nailed it. Like it's hard to argue with anyone now about there's all these other phones. A lot of the Chinese phones I have are really good with imaging too, like Huawei and even Xiaomi and some of the phones like OnePlus, etc. But it's like, Samsung and Apple and Google are just still completely nailing it. Like to the point where you're like, why would I bother using anything else? And with the versatility, as you said, for vlogging, I'm having the 2 telephotos for me is kind of the killer, right? So yeah, I love it. It's great for that. Let's see, number 3. I think it was 5G, my number 3. Like, it has every 5G flavor. Like, like iPhones do too, and the Pixels do as well. But the Pixels don't always have millimeter wave, like the cheaper ones. And, iPhones, of course, have all the things. But it's very hard to find a Android phone in the US that has everything, like millimeter wave, sub-6, mid-band, and for all 3 carriers. So if you're buying this unlocked, you have, all the options in the world to use whatever network you want, whenever, wherever, if you're traveling, whatever, it's great. My number 4, let me see. I think battery life and performance was one of them. The battery life, you see, I didn't have as much to say about battery life a week ago when Anobong was on because we just, scratching the surface. But now that I've used this thing for a week, like, wow, it just keeps going. It's really, really good. And of course, it's fast. It does really well. When my review is up on Hot Hardware, folks, check out. I have a whole performance thing in there because it's technical. But if you're a gamer, this is not going to be your best phone in terms of like long-term playing because it throttles after about 10, 15 minutes. But, it's not a huge deal. It's not like it's going to stop you from playing. It's just, this is where I think the Snapdragon 8 Gen 1, it starts off super fast, so much faster than before for games. But then it can't sustain that very long without killing your battery or without special like heat, tech, right? So that's why I think gaming phones this year are going to really matter with the Snapdragon 8 Gen 1. And let's see, what was my number 5? I kind of forgot. I have to watch that Instagram I did again. It's just, look, there's so many good things about this. I suppose the S Pen, I'm not an S Pen person, but I love the fact that it's an option. Other things I like about it are like, that it's just a well-rounded kind of like Swiss Army knife of a phone,
True. Very true.
Honestly, if I had to buy a phone today of my own money, since I'm more of an Android user, I would have to think really long and hard whether I want to pick that up or, pick up a Pixel 6 Pro, which is what I'm using right now. There are pros and cons to both, but if you want like everything in the kitchen sink, Samsung's all the way for me.
Oh yeah.
So it's getting harder for me to say to people, even people who are like adventurous and are going to say, hey, I'm going to buy a phone from China or whatever. And to tell them, yeah, I do it because it's like, this is so good now. And you can get such good deals on it, right? Like trade-in deals, carrier deals. That's just, I just don't know what to say to them. I'm like, yeah, that Oppo phone is awesome, but, you know? I mean, before that, it was more balanced. Like OnePlus was more of a part of the game. Like this year, hopefully they impress us. But, last year they were kind of meh. And so in previous years, it always has like, well, if you want to be different, you can get a OnePlus or a Google, right? But now it's just like, there's really the Pixel. We don't know much about the OnePlus 10 Pro. I mean, we know a lot about it because it's sold in China and some people did videos already. But we don't have a US version yet. So until we have one, then it's really moot. And there's rumors of a OnePlus 10 Ultra, which would have like a periscope lens and stuff. So again, this is like,
interesting.
To me, that's the other thing I want to point out. And you tell me what you think of this. It's early in the year and already Samsung's just planted that stake in the ground and just said, this is it, guys. This is the model. This is what you go after for the rest of the year, everyone. Like more than before, right?
It felt like that kind of last year too. They kicked things off for the year. And they're coming back with that same energy this year, just delivering another phenomenal phone with things that I feel like they listen to the users about in terms of like, I think they got a lot of feedback probably regarding the S Pen being external last year in the Ultra. And to see that now into the phone, like you, I don't use it as often, but I do love the fact that it's in the phone. I would prefer to see it on the right side instead of the left side. I don't know. It just feels, because I'm probably like mostly holding my phone in my right hand. It just feels like kind of more natural for it to be.
That's,
I don't know.
It was the same with the Note 20 Ultra. That's the first time they switched sides on the S Pen. And like, I'm obviously right-handed, and it just confuses me. Like, I just can't get used to it.
It feels cumbersome. Like, it just feels like, then it starts to feel clunky because it seems more like you definitely need both your hands to use the S Pen, but I don't know. It doesn't feel as natural and intuitive, I guess, for it to be on the left. Maybe because I'm right-handed.
Well, lefties are going to be really happy, right?
Oh yeah, they're happy right now, definitely smiling. But I have been enjoying that.
Absolutely, it's interesting to me that on paper, like on the surface, the Ultra is really like a Note 20 Ultra mixed with the S21 Ultra. Just the camera is really from the S21 Ultra last year, because the chassis, everything else, like the screen size, the design, the S Pen, all that is very Note. But it's interesting to me that they decide to still call it a Galaxy S. I think they should have called it the S21 Note, because that way you can acknowledge both brands. You know what I'm saying?
I definitely feel you there. Or what, the Note 22 Ultra? Combine the two of them. But no, I definitely understand that. If they can combine the names in some form or fashion, being they did combine the features and the design. So I definitely could feel you there. Yeah. People are joking anyway, calling it the Note 22.
I mean, yeah, it really is. I mean, like, the Note is back, long live the Note. I mean, it's just interesting to me that they didn't change the naming, but everything else is all Note, other than the cameras. But that's only because the Note is a year and a half old, the old 20 Ultra, right? So they're going to use the S21 Ultra cameras on the S22, right? So
right. Because as you say that too, I'm sitting here thinking, like, if they did toy with the idea of still bringing out a Note, what would it even look like, being that the Ultra is so ultra, you know what I mean? What could they add to make it justify the price and the name and all the weight that the Note carries under its name?
I think it made sense. Even, a lot of it was dictated by supply issues and chip availability and problems like that. But I think, like, even without all that, even if COVID hadn't happened, this is the logical way to do it. I think that it was getting a little silly because the S Ultra, like the large S, was always so close to the Note, but it didn't have the S Pen. And I just thought that was such an artificial, barrier, like distinction. I don't know. So I'm happy.
That makes sense. Yeah. It's a better move, it seems, all the way around.
So are there any downsides? I mean, the size, but like, I can't, and price, I guess?
That's what I was going to ask you. Is there anything that you weren't too fond of? The one thing I'll say that I've experienced so far that I'm not too fond of is the rocking from the camera. Like, I know a lot of the bigger phones with the bigger cameras do have that rock, but for some reason, I don't know if it's the size of the display or just what, but like, I was using my phone actually on the table. Sometimes you point that it rocks. Yep. But it's like, how often do you actually use your phone like that? But I was physically using my phone like that to do something because I didn't feel like holding it. And it was pretty annoying to the point that I really wanted to just put it in my hand because it started to affect my experience.
100%.
It wasn't just something that I noticed. It was something then that started to annoy me. So that's the one thing that I don't like. Deal breaker? No, not at all. I still lean into the phone. I still recommend it. It's just something worth mentioning, I'd say.
Yeah, it's particularly bad on this phone for sure. I found that putting it in a small case, I have a very small.
Oh, that makes sense.
Let me actually show the audience what I've got. You'll see mine. I don't know if it'll come across here. Let me look at the Skype screen. But you see how I have this case on it? It's just a very thin case, but it's just enough to flatten it at the top. So now when it's on the table. And it's not bulky, like it's not going to protect the phone very much. It's just for scratches and stuff. And I found that really, really helps. So mine is black, my phone, so it makes it look funky and fun like yours because I love that burgundy, whatever wine color that you have in yours.
Yes, it looks beautiful. It's definitely more like a plum in person, you know. Yeah. But I love it. It's unique, and like we were saying earlier, it's just not, for me at least, from what I've seen on a lot of the flagship phones, it's not a common color. They always bring out a unique one, so I was happy to see that one.
I do wish I had that Galaxy Note 20 Ultra color, or the bronze, whatever it was called.
The bronze.
Mystic Bronze.
Ah, okay.
Do you remember that?
The name sounds familiar. Yeah.
Oh, it was a good one.
The Mystic Bronze is pretty, I
kind of wish I brought it back, but I think that wine color that you have is much nicer than the black. But like we're nitpicking here. Look, we're like scratching our heads as we're talking. Like,
right.
What is there about this phone?
You really got to think. Is there anything you would have?
And this will probably be different for you because I know you've used Samsung phones for a long time, but I'm not a huge fan of the UI. Like, I think it's fine. Don't get me wrong. I can live with it. It's totally okay. I still prefer like Pixel or Moto or like the kind of more stock. But that's not really a complaint. That's more of a preference. I think. And I'm really trying to nitpick here. I'm like, okay, what are the things? But hey, maybe we can switch to the other phones because you have the S22. I have the 22 Plus they sent me. So we probably have a slightly different perspective on the twins, as I call it. Because, the S22 Ultra is essentially a Note, and it has like that extra camera and crazy specs, and it's just big and expensive. But then the 22 and the 22 Plus are just basically like little sister and big sister, right? Like the same.
Pretty much.
The same phones, just slightly different in screen size and in battery. So what's your experience been like with 22?
The 22, just being transparent with you, I haven't used it as much as I've used the Ultra, but in the light use that I've had, it's been nice. I do like the way that I can handle it with one hand a lot easier. And I do like that it does, like you said, mirror a lot of the features on its big sister, which then to me allows you to kind of focus more on the design in terms of the size and the battery as the main distinguishing factors between the two. I know there are other smaller things as well that are different, but the main things that I think the average consumer would look at, they both possess. So then you can focus more on which feels best to you for your day-to-day use. And that's something that, phones, especially more so now present day, when they have the, so to speak, little sister and the big sister, they're blurring that line of difference between the two a little bit more. And I personally like that because I hated having to choose the larger phone for the better features, the better
right, like Apple did with the 12 Pro Max versus the 12 Pro, right? Now at least the 13 Pro Max and the 13 Pro are like pretty much on par. You just get a bigger screen and a bigger battery, but it wasn't always like that. And it wasn't always like that with the S20 series as well, I remember.
Exactly.
It started with the S21. Yeah, totally.
So it's nice to see that they're bridging that, so to speak, gap, so to speak, and having them more similar than not. Because then it allows you, to me, it makes my decision a little bit easier,
right.
Or maybe even a little bit harder because now they're so similar,
Oh man,
but
you can't win.
You can't win. But I do like the S22. I guess personally want some more experience with it to speak, further on it.
What do you think of the design? So, it's an evolution of the S21 design from last year, right? But it feels different in hand. Like for me, it took me a little while to figure it out. I pulled out my old S21 and it's, the frame on the old phone is thinner and kind of melts into the camera. The camera part is blended into the frame. There's no seam. Whereas if you look on the new phone, the back is flatter, like it doesn't roll into the sides, and then it's more like a knife. Like it's not slab, it's not perfectly rectangular on the sides, not flat on the sides, but it's more like an iPhone because the front and the back are perfectly flat, and then you have a slightly curved frame all the way around the phone. And so I think because of that, it feels a little I'm not sure if it's better or worse. It's more of a preference thing here, but it feels slightly different in hand. That was the first thing I noticed. Like visually it looks the same almost, but then you touch it and you're like, oh, that's interesting. And I mean, again, we're nitpicking here. It's not a problem or anything. It's just more like there is a design difference, right? There's a design difference. The displays are gorgeous. Oh, I know what it was on the S22 Ultra. My number 5 was the display. That display. It's just killer.
That's what I was saying. It just really sets the bar, like everything from watching your own videos to watching movies to even watching YouTube videos, whatever content you're consuming visually, it just looks good. And then you can take it a step further by going into your settings and adjusting the resolution, right? And the color vibrancy. So, I mean, that's one thing I do like and admire about Samsung. One, they're not afraid to push the envelope and try something new. And they're constantly doing that. And on top of that, they give you like a ton of features to really give you a more personalized experience, which is not something that all phones do and can provide. And sometimes it can be too much, you know, like I've had my moments where I'm just like overwhelmed and I'm just making it more complicated than it needs to be. And that's when I'll get off of the, you know, Nova launcher. I'll remove the launcher that I have that I'm trying to use with the Samsung features to just take it a notch up and just use it stock, you know. But I do love the features that you have.
It's funny you mentioned Nova because my biggest gripe with the interface on Samsung phones in general is, and they haven't changed this with Android 12, is the app trace scrolls sideways, right? Like I'm so used to like the Pixel way, which is scrolls vertical. So I put Nova on there just to solve that problem. That's the only reason.
I gotcha. You know? I put Nova for the custom icon packs. Like, I mean, you can go to the Samsung store, but
I'm just boring. I don't customize.
See, I customize probably way too much.
Well, but that's fun. That's the thing about Android, you know. So,
yes, that's the beauty.
So sorry, I derailed our conversation about the S22 and the 22 Plus, but the display on all three is incredible. But I think the Ultra in particular is just, you know, again, Ultra. It's like they just keep making it better. It's so bright now. Oh my God, you know, and the quality, and of course the choice of resolution, all that. But you know, the other thing I'm really impressed with the 22 Plus, I'm in the same boat as you, by the way. I did not spend as much time with the 22 Plus versus the Ultra. I know you have the regular 22, but the big thing I noticed is, I don't know if you remember, but the S21, not the Ultra, the regular and the Plus last year.
Yes.
They were basically carrying over the cameras from the 20 series, which was a 12 megapixel main and a 12 megapixel ultra wide. And then you had this weird 64 megapixel telephoto, but it was a fake telephoto because they would just crop the sensor, right? They would take that 64 megapixel and take the middle of it and basically zoom in 3 times by doing that, which was not really, it was clever, and it also let them do the steady video better.
Yeah.
But it didn't give them the ability to do a proper telephoto. And it suffered because of that, relative to the competition, relative even to their own products. Like, I think the fan edition phones, the S20 fan edition, the 21 S21 fan edition, have a better telephoto than the S21 and the S20 because they have a real 3x, right? Now, they don't do the super steady as well because they're not using that big 64 megapixel sensor for that. But it's a little, you know, technical, but it's makes a huge difference because this year we're getting a real 10 megapixel 3x telephoto, no excuses. The ultra wide stays the same. And then that 50 megapixel main sensor is super hot. Like, I don't know what they did, but all of a sudden it's almost as good with the main sensor as the ultra.
Yeah.
And that, I mean, that's exciting to me because it's like, I was always a little hesitant to recommend the 21 and 21 Plus to people who were really into camera stuff, because I was like, you really did give up something compared to the Ultra, but now you're really not, other than the 10x, you know, crazy, what it's called, like, you know, periscope thing, which, you know, is the trick, right? Is why you buy the Ultra.
Yeah.
But like, I think for the average person, right? Like, think of this. They're just doing their thing. Like the people who buy iPhones and all the Galaxies out there, they don't buy the high-end ones usually. They buy an iPhone 13 or they buy an S22. They're going to get better photos no matter what they do now.
That's very true. And that's a good way to look at it. And it's funny that you say that in terms of, like, I guess, which is the biggest seller out of the lineup, so to speak. And I did a poll on my Instagram, actually, because I wanted to know which phone should I put the most attention and time to right now that my audience cares to see. And I'll say at least my audience on Instagram, it was significantly higher votes for the Galaxy S22 Ultra as the phone that they wanted to learn more about, which is one of the reasons that I've been spending more time with it between the two.
Right.
I thought it was going to be the Galaxy S22. So, but out of the options that I gave him, it was between the Galaxy S22 and the Galaxy S22 Ultra because those are the two phones I have. But it just kind of it took me by surprise when I saw as many votes for the S22 Ultra. So I don't know, maybe if that's the biggest seller out of the three. What have you seen so far in terms of like what seems to be selling the most or gaining the most attention?
Well, my audience are big nerds, so they're really going to be into all the tech, and so the S22 Ultra, of course. But look, that's why I'm also want to tell people here on the show that if you don't have the budget or you don't think you need that 10x telephoto or the S Pen, like I can wholeheartedly, without feeling any kind of regret, tell you go buy an S22 or an S22 Plus. Because those cameras are so much better this year. Like really, I mean, it's like if you just mash away at the button, you're not going to notice a huge difference. But in low light, those fringe cases, oh yeah, very, very much an improvement. So, to me, that's kind of what one of the, if I had to do top fives on the S22, that would be the camera would be the biggest change, I think. And then battery life too, I mean, you have the 22, but I have the 22 Plus, which is bigger. And here's a kicker, right? So you look at the specs, the Ultra has a 5,000 milliamp hour battery, of course, right? And then the Plus has a 4,500 milliamp. It's not that big of a difference, but it's still enough of a difference. Well, here's a killer thing. I ran my battery tests for my review because Hot Hardware is all about specs and numbers, and I noticed that the battery lasted longer on the Plus than on the Ultra, even though I had the Ultra set to 1080p. So I can't figure it out. It's not by much. It's like, I think like 12 hours versus 14 hours or something like that. There's not a huge difference on how much longer it ran, but it's so good, the battery life on this Plus. I was really blown away.
It's like it's the best, like it's a mid tier out of the three, but it's like the best of both, in terms of like you can get some of the more premium features, but still have a device that is a bit less in price. So you can kind of get maybe more for less, I guess, if you want to look at it that way. If you were eyeing the Ultra or the S22 Plus, or rather, if you're eyeing the S22 Plus and the S22. So yeah, it's a nice little mid-tier, I would say. You get a little bit of the best of both worlds, so to speak.
Yeah, when I first got it, I was like, oh, I wish it sent me the 22 because that's a big change, like a big difference. But then I was like, oh, it's just going to be like, what's the point? I'm busy. My thought was, why don't spend extra $200 and get the Ultra? And then I started using it a bit more, and I was like, oh, okay, so it's a little less bulky in your pocket. You still get a big screen. The battery life is even better. At least, I ran one battery test because they take 12 hours to run, right? So I didn't want to it could be that if I run it multiple times, maybe at the end, the S22 Ultra will win. But basically you're getting pretty much the same performance in terms of battery life, which is exciting. So I was happy about that. That was cool. I'm trying to think what else there is. I mean, like spec-wise, other than the cameras, they're all very close, and the batteries and the screens, right? It's just a tough one. I think the best value for sure is the S22, the regular S22 for sure, because you're still getting a great battery, a good display, and I think there's a couple of things you're losing. I mean, three things. You're losing Wi-Fi 6E, which again, nerds. Yes,
that's correct.
Nobody has, I don't even have a Wi-Fi 6 router at home right now. I have like 5 something,
I don't think
right?
I do either.
Never mind 6E with 6 gigahertz. But you do not have that on the base model, the 22. And then you're missing the ultra wideband, which right now Samsung only uses for one thing, and it's the Samsung tags. So instead, it's using Bluetooth, so it's not quite as precise as locating tags, it's kind of like AirTags, but the Samsung version of that. And if you have a BMW, like a new one, it uses the ultra wideband for unlocking the doors. So you don't get that feature. But I mean, that's one or two cars, right? And most cars use Bluetooth now anyway, so it doesn't matter. And then you go down from 45 watt fast charging to 25 watt fast charging.
That is correct.
That's the only three big differences. And honestly, there's a $200 price difference there. I'm not sure it's worth upgrading unless you need the bigger screen. I don't think it's worth upgrading to the 22 plus. If you're on a budget or if you want to save a bit of money is what I should say. The 22.
So I was about to say, so you feel either go for the S22 or go all the way to the S22 Ultra.
Yeah, I mean, there is some room for the S22 Plus insofar that, some people might say, well, I want the bigger screen, but I don't need the better camera. Then maybe. But I don't know. It's a tough one. I mean, I'm kind of excited we have these problems. Like,
again, because we didn't always have these things to concern ourselves with. Our lists were longer, but now it's like you're saying, we're trying to find something like, well, what would be that one thing, but you got to really think hard. And at the end of the day, the beautiful thing about it is in even pointing out these things, they're not deal breakers. They're not things that would deter you from buying the phone or recommending the phone. And that hasn't always been the case. So it's good to see that we're at this point now with technology where phones are so good, it's hard to pick out what else we want to see or what we don't like. So it's a good space to be in. Good problems is what I call them.
Exactly, right? I feel like they've just nailed so many things. It bothers me a bit because I'm like, I want to be more critical. I want to find flaws, No, I don't want to try to be negative. I'm just like, I want to balance it out with all this positive stuff. And also, I feel like I'm just worried that America, at least, like the US, is turning into a land of Apple versus Samsung, like hardcore. Like we used to always be very Apple versus Samsung, but there was always Google and OnePlus and a few other players in there. But like right now, if you're an Android user, I'm telling you, as somebody who is not a big fan of Samsung's UI, it is a hard like call to resist these phones. Like they are so good. So I don't know. What do you do?
With you saying that, even if you're out and about and you take a look at, people in their phones, it's typically either an iPhone in their hand or, like you said, if it's an Android, it's a Samsung phone. It's not as often that I see a phone that is not one of the two, at least from what I've seen. Not to say that I've never seen any other brands, but those two brands are so heavy. It's like I don't really see much else. They're really dominating.
Yeah.
Either iPhone or Samsung is what people tend to say. You know what I mean? It's not even Android. It's iPhone or Samsung. Basically, or Apple or Samsung.
That's what I'm saying. Like, and it's more than ever this year, I think, is going to be like that. Because, OnePlus hasn't given us anything great. And the Pixel 6 Pro is awesome, but, it's still a niche player. OnePlus was the one that I felt had a chance to kind of have a bit more volume because they were sold by T-Mobile, and stuff. And then, last year they were just kind of like, wah, wah, wah. I mean, they weren't bad, but they weren't super exciting. So that's the wild card right now. If you're waiting and you're not in a rush to buy and you're not going iPhone and you're like, I'm in the US, I want a phone from a carrier, like, supported properly with all the bands, and I don't want a Pixel for whatever reason because it's already 4 months old or whatever, right? I would say if you can wait to see what OnePlus brings, especially if there's rumors of that 10 Ultra, which might have a periscope as well.
True.
Because they know this year they can't mess up. Like the 9 was not that good. The 9 Pro was a very good phone, but it was too expensive because, you cannot justify spending almost as much as an Ultra on a OnePlus 9 Pro or 10 Pro. And you're not going to get the carrier deals. You're not going to get the trade-in deals. It just doesn't make sense, right? Like, so,
No.
I mean, nerds like, we're going to go for it because we're like, oh, I want this particular feature or something. But the average person is just going to walk into a carrier store and just come out with a Galaxy, basically.
And the way they even look at the phones, the things that matter to them are different.
For sure.
And more specifically, the camera. And 100%. Taking it even a step further, depending on the demographic, it definitely could be even social media and the way the camera appears when you're on certain social media platforms. Totally. So the things that are priorities to the average consumer are a little bit different.
You know, it's interesting here in San Francisco when I walk around, most people have iPhones, like the vast majority. But when I see an Android phone, it's usually one of two things. It's either a flagship, like a Galaxy of some kind, and it generally seems to be more tradespeople, like contractors and stuff like that.
Yes, I've seen that. I have seen that.
And then every now and then you see like Moto G or like some prepaid Android because people are on a budget and they're saving money and they don't care about having the latest and the greatest. And that's basically what I see empirically walking around, you know, this crazy city that I live in.
Question for you, with you saying that, have you really seen people with the Galaxy Fold or a foldable phone?
Not really.
I haven't.
Not much either. And, you know, I'm in a pretty tech savvy place. So like, you'd think I would randomly from time to time, you know, other than all our good friends, Michael Fisher and all these folks,
right?
And that I would run into someone who's using a folding phone as their main phone. But every time I go to the coffee shop or to like, you know, one of the local sandwich places near my house, when I was reviewing the Z Flip 3 and the Z Fold 3 and I was pulling them out to like do tap to pay or whatever, everyone was just like, oh, what is that? You know, like, like there's always that weird. And so to me, I'm like, I understand that if I was like in a small town somewhere, but like this is Silicon Valley. Like, you know, people have money and they could buy this and they probably know it exists. So I was just surprised there was still a lot of like, you know, shock. Well, not shock, but more like, what is that? Like, tell me more about it kind of thing.
Oh, Inquisition.
Yeah, I got a lot of, totally. I got a lot of people like, hey, can you buy that? Is that real? Like, does it work? Is it solid? Like, and I told them, I was like, you know, if you had asked me last year, I would have said, hold your horses. This is cool. But this year, like the Z Flip in particular, I said like the Z Flip 3, I said, if you want to be the cool kid on the block and you want an Android phone, like this is no brainer. Like it's water, it's water resistant. You get all that, you know, great performance, good camera, decent battery life. Like I said, you cannot go wrong this year. But you didn't hear that.
No, that's true. Hey,
I don't want to be responsible when you don't like it.
No, I totally feel you. But it's with you saying that, I mean, as you were talking, it's just like I was thinking like, I know I have the foldable, the Galaxy Fold, and I'm like, I have enjoyed it, but I haven't really seen people using it out and about. Like, it's not a phone that I've seen in someone's hands other than someone that's reviewing it. So I'd just be interested to see, like, the consumer base that is using it, you know, what city that's in, what they're using it for. Like, I don't know. It'd just be interesting to see it actually out in the real world, being used by someone that's not reviewing it. So not to say that it's not selling, because obviously it is. I just don't know to who, you know?
For sure. Yeah, I don't think I've seen one that wasn't either a journalist or like, you know, somebody who works for the company.
Right.
But, you know, speaking of which, switching gears a little bit to some new stuff, there is rumors that the Samsung Galaxy Z Fold 4 and Z Flip 4 are coming. Obviously, we know that's happening, but the question is when and how and what. And what we're seeing here is that, as you know, the Fold 3, the big one, had S Pen support, but you had to buy it as an accessory, right? So the rumors right now from this article on Android Police, I'll put in the show notes, is that we're looking at a Z Fold 4 that would have potentially an S Pen built in.
Nice.
So how do you feel about that? Because we, you know, now like that gives people a choice of notes.
Okay, the battle of the notes. That's the territory we enter into then. Ooh, that's a tough one. But at the same time, with you saying that, you're then definitely buying it for its ability to fold, for that price jump, more so than not, depending on what other features they would bring to it. But if they put the S Pen inside of the Fold, I think it'd make it even more enticing, because I will say, when I was testing it, to have it, you know, as an external accessory, it made me less inclined to use it. Because one, I didn't want to have to keep up with it. I was scared I was going to lose it. It even putting the case on the phone that would hold it makes the phone bulkier, which affects the experience. And, you know, being a woman and, you know, our pockets aren't that big anyway, unless you're going to put it in your purse or something. It's just like, I don't know. I wasn't really fond of the fact that it was not inside of the phone. So if they actually put it inside the phone, oh man, that would definitely just take its usability to that next level because you're simplifying your setup.
For sure. I'm looking through this article real quick, and basically the other news here, the other rumor other than the built-in S Pen for the Fold is that we have a slightly smaller display, like minorly slightly smaller and maybe less bezel. So the form factor of the phone itself, when it's shut and when you put it in your pocket, would be a little more manageable and smaller, and that might be a good thing because that very tall, skinny front screen is always a bit tough to use, I find. I have an Oppo Find N. The Oppo Find N is the Oppo foldable, and it's like a shrunk down Galaxy Z Fold 3. It's when it's shut, the size of an iPhone 13 mini. So imagine putting two iPhone 13 minis next to each other and opening them up like a book. And that's the size of the inside screen. So it's actually very cool because it's almost as big when it's open as the Z Fold. But when it's shut, the outside screen, it feels like you're holding a thick iPhone, like an iPhone 13 mini with a battery pack. You know what I'm saying?
Interesting. Yeah. How did you enjoy using the front display on the Fold? Did you find that you tended, like,
I don't like it as much. I found it too cumbersome. Mostly for me, it was typing. Like the keyboard is so shrunken.
Yes,
that was the challenge, and that that Oppo is fixing that because it's still small, like the keyboard on a iPhone 13 mini, but it's still wider than the Fold 3, right? So there you go.
Yeah. The other thing that I wasn't as big on, and I'm trying to make sure I remember correctly, is like if I customize the front display, when I opened the phone up, it was, my layout was different.
Yep.
And if when I selected the option to mirror what I did on the front display, on the inner displays, it wasn't what I thought it would be.
Right.
I thought it would be, I can't remember exactly how it was, but I thought it was going to be a bit different. It didn't exactly mirror it in the way that it was on the front display. It was still a bit different. It wasn't as fluid as I would like. So I would hope that with this iteration, that's something that gets addressed and changed as well. So that, I don't know, it just felt like too much. Like I got this layout on the front, then I got this layout on the inside. When I tell it I want it to mirror, I want it to truly do that in every sense of the word. So
that's my problem with the Fold. The reason I don't think I would ever want to own it as my main phone is because, first of all, I don't think I need that kind of screen real estate, but also because, overall, I feel like there's still enough stuff here that needs a bit more work, like on the software side, and that's why I like the Flip better of the two Samsung phones that are folding. Rumors on the Flip 4 are very few changes that we don't know anything right now other than the screens are going to be almost the same size inside and out. But as I said to you earlier, that's my wishful thinking, but I'm hoping for them carrying over the S22 cameras. Probably not the telephoto, but maybe the ultra wide and that 50 megapixel main. I'm hoping that'll happen. So
I would like to see better cameras
for sure.
Yeah. But it's so cool using the cameras on the Fold. Like my friends are always wowed. One, when I pull the phone out, and two, when I show the camera and show that I can take their photo while they can see themselves, or how it looks when I put it, in an L-shaped format, so that we can see ourselves. Right, the flex mode. I couldn't even think of the word. I had a brain fart. Thank you.
I only remember because I just read it in the story I was just reading.
Yes, the flex mode. It's just like, it's definitely a conversation starter, the phone, period. But then as you show the features, it's definitely, it has that wow factor. And the pictures came out pretty well. It's just the inner display cameras. The cameras inside weren't the best. And I feel like those are ones that I would like to use a little bit more, but have the confidence that they'll perform the way that I need them to as well. But still, like with the S22 lineup, these are things that we're pointing out that could be better, but I will still stand by saying that none of these things are deal breakers for me. I would still highly recommend the phone and still enjoy my experience. But if you're like, what didn't you like, or what would you like different? It would be that.
Yeah, for sure. So we'll see what happens, but I'm excited about the folding phones this year. I'm hoping that, they bring even more to the table, because last year, like, the big surprise was the water resistance.
Yeah, that was.
And I mean, that's a big deal for people, and also more rugged, more robust, like even though it's still more fragile than a regular phone, they made it more bulletproof, which is why I was able to feel more confident recommending it to people when they saw it at the coffee shop,
Right.
So we got a bunch of quick news items I want to go through so that my listeners can know what's up, because Mobile World Congress is coming up next week. Well, it's actually the week after, but I'm flying out on the 24th.
That's what I was going to ask. Are you going?
Yeah. Are you going too?
No, I won't be making it this year.
Okay.
But I'll be watching your coverage.
Awesome. And so, there's a lot of phones being announced that are not US phones, but they're going to be important. As you know, BBK Group, the parent company of OnePlus, is also, Oppo, and it's also Vivo, and it's also Realme. And they all have slightly different products, but overall they share a lot of technology and they share a lot of features. So when the flagship comes out from Oppo, usually the OnePlus Pro phones is pretty much the same as their flagship Pro phone, right? Like it's like cosmetically different, slightly different OS skinning, right? But it's basically the same. So we already know what the OnePlus 10 Pro looks like because it's out in China and it's coming sometime to the US. But now we have the other shoe that dropped. The Oppo Find X5 Pro is basically the equivalent from Oppo. It's a Snapdragon 8 Gen 1, like the Samsung S22s. It has like crazy ass cameras, and we don't know much really because all they said is Snapdragon 8 Gen 1. 24th of February is the big announcement at Mobile World Congress. Well, actually a few days before Mobile World Congress because that doesn't start till the 28th. And Hasselblad. They announced a Hasselblad partnership. So it's not just OnePlus now. It's also parent company Oppo that's going to have phones with a Hasselblad branding, which is a change. I know, right? Like, do you see how those two companies are getting closer and closer, Oppo and OnePlus? They used to be much more separate, but now they're kind of like, so that's basically all we know, folks. And I just want to let you know to keep an ear out, especially those of you listening in India and in the UK and Australia, because I know there's a lot of my audience abroad. For those of you who don't really care about the US stuff, your nice BBK Group flagship, your Oppo, is coming on the 24th. So keep your eyes peeled. Oh, and they have a custom ISP. So you know how when we went to Qualcomm in Hawaii, they told us all about the ISP for all the great Snapdragon Sight, all the photography features. Well, Oppo is throwing all that out the window and created their own chip to process photos and videos on their cameras called the Mari Silicon X, like MARI Silicon X. Yeah, so that's got me as a camera enthusiast very like both scratching my head and also like, oh, I wonder if how that's going to work out, right? It could be a disaster, but it could also be really great. So interesting, right? That like this is not the first time. I think there was another company. I think it was Vivo, which is a sister company, that did a custom ISP last year on one of their 888 phones. So we'll see what happens. Basically. Yeah,
time will tell, and I'm excited to see because all of these things which you're mentioning, they sound pretty exciting to have on a phone.
I think it's important because like when Oppo does something else, it's like, one foot drops, then OnePlus does something else, or the other way around, right? So this could signal that maybe that if there is a rumored OnePlus 10 Ultra that has a periscope telephoto, maybe they'll use that same custom chip for the image processing, since they have also Hasselblad branding. You see what I'm saying? That's why I think that's kind of the connection to the US market, if there is a connection. It's a lot of ifs because we don't know if a OnePlus 10 Ultra is happening. Yeah, so we'll see, right?
That we will.
Yeah. The next one that I want to point out, I have an unboxing video on my channel of the Realme 9 Pro Plus and 9 Pro. Realme is kind of like, you remember when OnePlus was super affordable? And they're kind of like breaking all the rules.
I do.
So Realme is the new OnePlus. It's the same parent company. So the same parent company as Oppo and OnePlus. And they're making like these really affordable, heavy spec, really nice looking phones for India primarily. And like Vietnam and Philippines and other markets like that. And this really got me excited about this 9 Pro Plus is that you know how OIS, like optical image stabilization, is like a high-end feature. You see it on like the flagships. Sometimes you see it on a mid-range phone. Sometimes even flagships don't have it. Like last year, the OnePlus 9, they didn't have it on there, which was a boneheaded decision because it made the low light pictures a little softer. And so, you know, it stabilizes your lens, right? Guess what? This phone is $350 or so, and it has OIS on the main lens. Not only that, but the main lens is the same sensor as the ultra wide on the OnePlus 9 last year. So it's a really high-end 50 megapixel OIS camera on a $335 is the price.
What?
Phone. I know. So that's kind of why I was like, okay, like send me those. I want to play with them. The other one, the 9 Pro, they somehow sent me both. I just figured I'd unbox them together. The 9 Pro doesn't really excite me very much. But get this, right? You know your phones. This has 90 hertz AMOLED, right? It has a Dimensity 920 5G chip from MediaTek. It has that crazy camera thing, and it's $335. Oh, and 60-watt charging. 60 watt.
Oh.
Yeah.
Wow.
I tell you, there's some good stuff happening in other countries. We're just not getting the goodness.
Right. You just got to know how to get it if you can get it, because that right there, that's not something we commonly see here as a phone that we can get. You know what I mean?
I mean, imagine if the Moto Gs that, you know, Moto send us were like this good for the price.
Yeah.
Now that would be cool. That's kind of why I'm excited about these things. And thankfully I can get my hands on them. Awesome. And then the next thing is, and this is more like an announcement really, like since you know, everybody's going to be keeping an eye on, out for all this stuff happening at Mobile World Congress. Honor, which is now split apart from Huawei, right, as its own brand, has been making a few phones for like the last year. And they have a big announcement for one called the Magic 4 coming on February 28th. So I'm bringing that up because mostly if you click on the link and look at this story from Fandroid, the teaser photo has this crazy camera eye thing. And so, you know, as a camera phone enthusiast, I'm always a little titillated and excited when I see something that looks out of control. So there you go. That's what I got you.
Nothing wrong with that.
I'm like, I want a piece of that. I'll take it. And honestly, in the past, when they were still together with Huawei, the Honor phones were kind of always the cheaper version of the Huawei phones. And they were always really great. So I'm looking forward to seeing what they bring to the table with these new phones at MWC. And then speaking of this OnePlus stuff earlier, we talked about Oppo, and you know Carl Pei, the guy who used to run OnePlus with Pete Lau. He left like a couple of years ago. And he started a company called Nothing, which is really weird because I'm like, I work for nothing. Like, no, I still get paid, but I work for it. See what I'm saying? Anyway.
It's a spin on words. Yeah, no, I never thought about somebody having to say that.
So this company Nothing made a pair of earbuds that was really good. And they were like $99 and they have wireless charging, active noise canceling, and this really cool translucent case. You've seen our friends' videos on YouTube. So get this. There are rumors that they're making a smartphone now. And
interesting.
It involves Google as partners, and it involves Qualcomm, Snapdragon as a partner. So
really?
Yeah, because what happened was, if you look at that link, Carl Pei tweeted something saying, I've switched back to Android because he was on an iPhone for a while. And then the responses were Android saying, like the Android Twitter account saying, we've got a lot to catch up on, Carl. And then immediately after that, Snapdragon account posting a picture of 3 bodybuilders holding, like doing arm wrestling like together. So the 3 of them are doing something is what it kind of
like
I don't know.
Teaser. Yeah, something for us to like.
This could just be
look into.
It just could be nothing, but it could also be like, it could be nothing. Oh my God, I can't believe I just said that. What a pun.
Oh God.
Oh my God.
Right. It's such an easy word to play off of too. You know,
Man,
but that
I
would
fell
be
into
interesting
that
to see
one,
that
didn't
trio. Yeah, you did, but it was good. It was a good fall.
but I didn't do it on purpose.
No, you didn't. You didn't.
Anyway,
But
yeah.
that would be a good trio, though. I would say that the
And
three of them made something together.
so there's another thing that is you have to kind of go and add to that sauce. You remember Essential?
Yes, I do.
They got bought by nothing like about a year ago. So they're not the product, right? But the brand and the IP and the, basically all the patents or whatever they had. So that's another reason why I'm like, this is very possible.
Mm-hmm. I wouldn't mind seeing that, honestly.
Yeah, and Kyle Pei, I've talked to him a few times, and he is a smartphone guy. Like when he decided to go do nothing, I was like, okay, earbuds, really? Like everybody's making earbuds. Don't get me wrong. You made really nice looking earbuds. They're affordable. They have good specs. I have a pair. They're wonderful. But like, that seems very restrictive. You can do better. You're way more ambitious than that, And here we are now with rumors of a phone. I'm calling this one, not busted, as Mythbusters would say. So that's real. It's happening.
And what if it was, and I don't know if I'm reaching with this one, but what if it was translucent like the headphones?
No kidding.
That would be dope.
Right? Because, you can buy phones that are kind of like that. Red Magic, the gaming phones, have a translucent back with a fan that's LED and you can see it spinning.
Okay.
And Xiaomi's done a phone like that too in the past. But here's the thing, it was fake. So like when the chips that you saw through there were like just painted on, you know what I'm saying? It wasn't really translucent, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So they have a chance to do it and make it look real and right.
If they did, that would be something that we haven't seen on the smartphone market. It would definitely set the bar. It would get, to me, a good buzz, just like the headphones did. Because again, we don't really see, translucent headphones like that. I don't think I've ever had, unless somebody modified it. You know what I mean? And went in and took off the back and put on a clear back type of deal, or put on a skin. But that would be so cool to see a phone like that. I don't know the logistics if it's something that's doable or feasible, but if it is, that would be that new innovative thing that I think could definitely set them apart across the market.
I'm totally excited about this if it's real.
Me too.
And too. All the good stuff from Essential, this very design centric, but without cutting corners. At the same time, also being well priced would be a good thing. Now
that part.
on paper, nothing is basically UK based as a company, even though the phones are made in China. They have an office in Shenzhen, and Carl is actually both Chinese and Swedish nationality. So he grew up in Sweden, I believe, and went to school there. So, I don't know if we'll see this phone here in the US. It's a tall order to get a phone in the US certified by all the carriers and all that. So I'm not quite sure if it's going to reach that far. But you know what? I don't care. I'll still get my hands on one and play with it. And that way you folks listening, especially those of you abroad, know what you're getting into if you're interested in, if that actually becomes true, which we'll see. Yeah.
I'll tell on that one as well.
I know. Well, listen, we should probably wrap up. Do you want to tell my audience where they can find you on the internet, all your social media handles, and talk about your YouTube and all that?
Of course. Yes. So on my YouTube channel, I like to take a kind of like conversational approach to technology. It's a combination of lifestyle and tech, reviews, unboxings, tips and tricks for different devices. Try to cover it all. But you can find me on YouTube and Instagram at TechmeOut, as well as on Twitter. And that's TechmeOut. Now on YouTube, you can find me under that. But on Instagram and Twitter, it's TechmeOut. So
there you go.
Those are the handles.
Absolutely. And folks, please subscribe to TechmeOut's YouTube channel and follow her on social. And you know where to find me on the internet. I'm at Tankgirl, that's TNKGRL, like the comic book character, but without the vowels. That's my handle on Twitter and on Instagram. If you want to ask questions about the show or comment about the show, hit both of us up on Twitter or Instagram, and we'll answer your questions and comments. And there's a couple of YouTube channels for you to subscribe to. youtube.com/mobiletechpodcast and youtube.com/mobiletechmore. They're basically visual complements to the podcast, unboxings, hands-ons, reviews, that sort of stuff. Mostly unboxings, really. And it's all about phones and personal audio mostly. And then there's youtube.com/mobiletechmore, which is about all the meta stuff, basically. All the technology that's related to the smartphone, but not directly smartphone, like home tech, car tech, travel tech, that sort of stuff. So you know how YouTube works. So like, subscribe, tell your friends, click the little notification icon, comments in the comments, let me know what you think of the videos. And if you want to comment about the podcast on the videos, that's totally fine too. I'll definitely field those questions. So check out the YouTube channels. And of course, the podcast lives at mobiletechpodcast.com. We're on Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Pocket Casts, Spotify, and everywhere good podcasts can be found. There's even an RSS feed there if you're old school and you want to subscribe the old way. So yeah, check it out. And please rate or review the show if your app lets you do that, because it helps with discovery. I'd certainly appreciate it. Also, we have a Patreon, patreon.com/tankgirl. That's patreon.com/TNKGRL. Got some special tiers there. You've got a video version of the podcast that comes out before the audio version, and it's less edited, a little more raw, and you get to see the phones, and you get to see TechmeOut in person, so check it out. There's also a Discord server you can join, and a tier for that. So yeah, I couldn't really do this podcast without your support, and Patreon is a great way to help. So consider joining the Patreon. There's all kinds of options and tiers there. I'd certainly appreciate it. I want to thank my patrons for being with me. I appreciate you all. And if you don't like Patreon, I get it. Don't worry about it. There is also a PayPal link in the show notes you can click through and buy me a coffee. I like myself a coffee. So maybe you can help that way. Finally, I want to thank our sponsor, Audible. Audible has been with us since the early days, and it's an awesome platform for audiobooks. It's the platform for audiobooks. So check it out. We have a special deal for you, 30-day free trial. You get to keep a book at the end. The URL for that is audibletrial.com/mobiletech. That's audibletrial.com/mobiletech. I think you'll stay if you try the 30-day free trial, because Audible is such a great platform. If you're like me and you like to read books, but you're constantly in front of the screen and you're tired and you'd rather have somebody read you a book, Audible's got you covered. They have tons of books. They have books read by the author. They have some short format stuff as well. They have some podcasts. Say you're on a road trip and you're driving and you want to be entertained, it's a great way to use Audible. Another one is on planes. It's hard to read on planes. It's dark. Your eyes get tired. Same deal. Listen to a book instead. So check out audibletrial.com/mobiletech and help me help Audible. And again, I want to thank them for being our longtime sponsor. And I want to thank you, TechmeOut, for being my guest yet again.
Thank you for having me. I've thoroughly enjoyed myself, as always, with you having these conversations. So thank you as well.
Well, we'll definitely have you on again at some point in the future. And folks, we'll have another podcast next week. So stay tuned for that. Until then, cheers, everybody.
Bye.
This has been the Mobile Tech Podcast with Tank Girl, proudly presented by worldpodcasts.com. You can visit us online at mobiletechpodcast.com.